Delaware, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire. The New York Times with an article out saying that the polls continue to look just great for Democrats heading into the midterms. Democrats are polling well in exactly the places where surveys missed the most in 2020. I don't even know what that means, but something tells me this is a mirage. This is more of the New York Times carrying the water for Joe Biden and Democrats nationwide. Interestingly enough, people that work at the New York Times, Allison, right around 1,300 don't ever want to go back to the office.
No, they're being told that they have to work 3 days a week from the office, and they say, no, that is too much. We want to work from home.
Yeah, I'm saying, why can't the people at the Boston Globe do the same thing, owned by the same company? All right, for more on that, let's welcome in former New York Congresswoman and Independent Women's Forum board member Nan Hayworth, former Trump campaign aide and Newsmax contributor Rick Gates is here, and candidate for Congress in New Hampshire, Gail Huff Brown, with us this morning as well. Gail, so nice to have you on this morning. Good morning.
Well, good morning, and thank you very much for having me on. It is a very, very exciting day. As you know, here in New Hampshire, we're the first in the nation primary state, so this is like our Super Bowl.
Yeah, this is a big one. And boy, you've got there are a lot of names in this race today. Take us through, what are the biggest issues to voters in the Granite State today?
Well, by far, inflation. I mean, people are worried. They're worried, are they going to be able to pay for their food and their gas bills? And we are talking about a huge increase in heating costs, and people are very, very worried about that. But also about the fentanyl that's coming up here. We have one of the highest, if not the highest, overdose death rates in the country per capita. And it's, I went down to the border. I was so concerned about what was happening. I got the Border Patrol Council's endorsement because they know I'm very, very serious about closing the border. We have to close the border. And that's been one of the things I've talked about again and again during this campaign.
Yeah, Gail, I was just going to ask you about the fentanyl crisis. I'm from Massachusetts. We hear a lot of stories out of New Hampshire there. Obviously, inflation, as you mentioned, a big concern. What are voters saying to you? How would you help folks in New Hampshire when you're dealing with fentanyl? And you also talk about you're really afraid that we're losing our freedoms in this country.
Oh, we are absolutely losing our freedoms. I spent 30 years as a journalist, and obviously my entire professional career has been about protecting the freedom of speech and freedom of religion and all of our freedoms. This is the live free or die state. We take our freedoms very, very seriously, and we have to, and we are going to do everything we can to protect them. The three things I've talked about are closing the border, stopping the spending. We have to stop the spending. We are leaving a debt for our children and grandchildren that is unforgivable. It has to stop. And I've called for a 5% cut across the board, every government agency and department. And the other thing is we have to have a parental bill of rights. Parents deserve a seat at the table. It has to happen. And if we don't do that, then you know what? We have failed. We have failed Granite Staters and we have failed Americans.
Nan, New Hampshire is similar to New York in that once you get away from sort of the Boston metro in southern New Hampshire and maybe Concord, it is a red state, much like New York, where once you get out of Manhattan, maybe the cities like Buffalo and Albany, New York is the same way. There's a lot of red in New York. Chris Pappas is the congressman that currently represents the 1st District. He's a freshman member of Congress. Is he beatable? Is New Hampshire ready to flip back red?
Well, I hope so. I would not be running if I didn't think that he was beatable and that I was the one to beat him. There's nobody else running who can beat Chris Pappas. And we have to. Listen, we don't have a seat at the table. We're not making decisions. We're just complaining unless we are in Washington, in Congress, sitting in a seat and making decisions. Everything else will stay the same if we don't. So yes, I do believe that this is a year that we can finally take back a seat. In all of New England, there are 33 federal seats, right? There's only one Republican, Susan Collins.
Right.
32 Democrats. I mean, that is not balanced. That is not fair. And Granite Staters have lost their voice, and I pledge to be their voice.
Yeah, and Nan, to Rob's point, New York, as he mentioned, is similar to New Hampshire. What do you think can happen in New Hampshire?
Well, we're certainly seeing the trends in New York, Allison. Lee Zeldin is gaining, the Republican candidate for governor, is gaining endorsements of more and more Democrats. And Gail makes obviously a very strong case for electing a Republican like her in New Hampshire. I have worked on campaigning in New Hampshire in the 2016 cycle. They like to see their candidates close up and personal. And the question I would have for Gail is, how does New Hampshire's Republican and independent electorate come together effectively to ensure that there is a victory for our part of the cause in this next election? How do you do that, Gail? How are you going to do that?
Well, from the very beginning, I've talked about unifying the party. If we don't unify the party, then guess what? The Democrats win again. We have to unify the party. We have to come together and say, listen, all of this is greater than us. None of this is about me. I got into this race because of my grandchildren. I want them to have the kind of freedoms that I've had and the kind of America I've had. So we have to unite. I've talked about that from the beginning. And these this negative advertising and this millions of dollars coming into the state from outside sources, that has to stop.
Yeah.
Right
Gail,
here in the Granite State, they don't want to hear from outside groups. They want to hear from us.
And
we are the people voting.
This race is, Rick, it's unbelievable. There are, I think, no fewer than 10 candidates that are running in the primary today. Other big names, Caroline Levitt, who worked with Kayleigh McEnany. I know she's got Ted Cruz's endorsement. Rick, as you see it, it's going to be a dogfight today, especially in a primary.
Absolutely. As Gail outlined, New Hampshire, particularly the first congressional seat where she's running, is probably one of the last swing districts in the United States. And it's going to be critical to watch this race unfold. And I'm looking at, and for Gail, this is a good question for you. What impact is Donald Trump having on that race, since there is a crowded field? And more importantly, how much Democratic interference are you seeing in the Republican race, which is a trend we've seen across the country?
Well, we are seeing Democrats that have gotten into this race. Obviously, they want the least experienced and people that they know can't beat their candidate. And frankly, I am the only one that can beat Chris Pappas. And the Democrats, obviously, they are playing in that arena, which is very, very unfortunate. And it angers me because this is our primary. They can go play and vote in their primary, but not in ours. That's just wrong. So I'm very upset about that, but what can we do? Millions of dollars are coming into this state, and they're coming in for Caroline Levitt. They're coming in for Matt Mowers. I'm the only independent conservative in the race.
Yeah.
I don't have anybody coming in for me. So, I don't know what that tells you.
Well, Gail, I'm curious. I'm curious how you were on Channel 5 in Boston, right, for years. WCVB Channel 5 Boston, which is if you're from that area of the country, Channel 5 is a behemoth as far as local news goes. I remember when Dick Albert passed away, my mom cried. We're from Massachusetts, so she was really emotional about that. Having spent 30 years with Dick Albert as a meteorologist up there. Has name ID helped you at all?
I think so. Everywhere I go, people say, listen, I watched you on TV. I trusted you. I believed you. I knew that you got to the bottom of things, that you looked for the facts and didn't give opinions. And I never gave opinions.
Yeah.
Nobody had any idea what my political beliefs were until I left the business. And now I am free to express them.
Yeah, and your husband, Scott Brown, former senator, he filled the Ted Kennedy seat. I've met your husband a few times. The first time I met him was about a decade ago.
Oh,
this is
look at
right
that.
outside the State House there. Scott Brown, sharp-looking guy. But that's me next to the former senator there, and he was involved in the Trump administration as well. Has that helped or hurt in a state like New Hampshire?
Well, of course it helps. Listen, Scott is a wonderful, wonderful man whom I've been married to for 36 years.
Yep.
And I love him desperately. And we've been together forever. And he hasn't had a part in the campaign per se. He's helped with fundraising.
Right.
That's it. Because this is not a Scott Brown race. This is a Gail Huff race.
Right.
And I tell people, you are not voting for Scott Brown. You're voting for Gail Huff.
Okay.
And, if they want Gail Huff to represent them, that's wonderful. But they're voting for Gail.
Okay. Gail, good luck to you today. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. It's going to be a big day. We'll keep a close eye on everything happening in the state of New Hampshire. Gail Huff, thank you so much for being with us. Rick Gates, Nan Hayworth, we'll do it again soon. Thank you.